I'm Glenn McGuinness, and this is Outburst. On the program, do we need more seats in the House of Commons?
I don't really think so.
I'd rather see a stab at proportional representation.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, I think.
No, there's enough seats.
But first, what's been almost 2 years since the pandemic began. Canada and many other nations around the world had to alter their course and protect their citizens from COVID-19. But now with a dangerous new variant spreading around the world, it seems the work to get COVID-19 behind us is far from done. So we took to the streets to ask Canadians how they feel the federal government has managed COVID-19 up to now. Our question:
are you satisfied with how the federal government has handled the pandemic?
Maybe to begin with, we understand that they were being cautious and careful and protecting us, and of course we appreciated that. But what we're not happy about is that they continue the COVID payments, and a lot of businesses are having a really hard time having people come back to work. And that's just creating such a huge debt for Canada, so we're very unhappy about that.
Yeah, I am. I think it was handled the best way it could be. It was a disaster to everyone, including the government, so I think they handled it well.
I would say more or less yes.
Really? Well, tell me more about that. Why?
Well, I think they got the benefits in place early and I think fairly effectively. The problem is they've left them on a little too long, in my opinion, because people are having trouble finding staff, and I think a lot of people would rather just stay home, collect the money, than go to work.
I would say probably not. I think there's just a lot of stuff they could have done differently, whether it be like shutting down schools. I think that's the biggest thing for me, is I know like graduations and even just them being shut down for so long was not fun, and it was not helpful to our education. Like, I'm in college right now, so it's okay, I can be in person, but I know a lot of university students who have to do online classes. It's a lot harder, and it's a lot more of a struggle to get their work done.
Not really, no. In many ways on travel, quarantining if you're coming from outside Canada, and not too many exceptions, or not having people quarantine if they're coming from outside Canada. I think quarantine is necessary to slow the spread.
No, I'm not really very satisfied. I feel that they should have worked more closely with the medical experts and followed more of their advice before they made decisions.
I'm not really happy with it, because it's, how could you be happy with something that just keeps on going and going and going and going, and it's going again, another variant, like, so is it just a scam, or, you know, what is it,
I haven't lived through a pandemic before, so I don't have much to compare it to. I think they were responsive in terms of getting that CERB out, which I think is important. And I know people had some issues with it, but I think that was a good response and quick, and not without its hiccups, but you need to respond quickly when people are losing their livelihoods, I think.
I think, yeah, the federal government doing really well. Yeah, I agree. And then, yeah, you know, I'm an immigrant, so if I would, like in China, we don't have any government support. So I came in the 1990s, so I know the difference. I like it. I like here being a Canadian. It's a free country. I got lots of freedom here. So I think the federal government doing good job for us, especially I have a small business there. So I have a lot of supplement support from the government, so I'm happy.
I was going through a really tough time because of job loss, like in the summer, and the CERB and all the checks, they really helped me out during that tough time. So, I mean, you know, we're a pretty big country. There's a lot of people to take care of, and I'm not exactly, you know, dissatisfied with how they handled it. I know it's hard, I know it's tough, and I know it took us, you know, out of the blue. So, yeah, no, I don't really have a huge complaint, really. It's tough for everybody, and I feel like some people just need to understand that.
With respect to where I live in Nunavut, it's been excellent. We've had our vaccines have showed up on time, ahead of the rest of the country in many ways, and we've got a really good chief medical officer that's made sure that there's controls in place.
I think the CERB was like partially successful at the beginning. I think everybody was like I was pretty grateful that that was there for me to cushion out my expenses. But I think that vaccine rollout was a disaster.
Generally, yes.
Why?
Because they supported the economy when it needed to be, and probably overdid it a little bit, but I think probably better to err on that side than too little. And I'd like them to pare back a bit faster now than they are, but generally I think they're okay.
Yes and no. I definitely benefited from the CERB program, and it really helped me out at a time that I had lost my job because of COVID. At the same time, it feels so chaotic and like there's so many mixed feelings, and I've seen Trudeau kind of like flip on certain issues, like go between different stances. So I don't know, I definitely feel like it's a complicated situation, but I was really grateful for that program.
I wouldn't say I'm satisfied with any government, but with the federal government, I'm especially disappointed that more stricter federal mandates weren't put in place, and the onus was rather put on the provinces themselves. I would have rather seen the federal government take over the mandates.
Yeah, I don't really know much about that part of it, but I would say, you know, it's probably standard. You know, I'm not nitpicking them, at least. You know, it's and we're all kind of self-isolating and everything anyway, so we're kind of responsible for ourselves too.
As far as I can tell, yes, I am. Coming from the States, it's a bit of a free-for-all between like where, you know, you go from one state to another and there's different regulations. It feels a little bit more consistent across Canada, and there's some safety in knowing that people are at least consistently wearing masks here.
I think they did their best, you know. No one's done this before. I think that Trudeau sort of kept a steady demeanor that was very calming. Yeah, I'm proud of Canada.
Currently, there are 338 federal ridings across Canada, which of course means 338 seats in the House of Commons. But that number is set to rise to 342 seats in the not too distant future. Alberta will be getting 3 additional seats, British Columbia 1 and Ontario 1. Quebec will be losing a seat, the first time since 1966 that a province had one of its seats reduced. So we took this question to Canadians.
Do we need more seats in the House of Commons?
Good question. Once again, from an Nunavut perspective, I think we need to have a bigger voice, and having more seats certainly would help. Right now, as you said, we only have 1 seat, but I'd like to see a larger Aboriginal representation in the House. So on the one hand, the answer is yes, but on the other hand, I want to make sure that it's in the right places. It's not just based on population sizes, but also based on certainly Indigenous rights are really important, and we need to kind of respect that. So I'd say yes, but I'd like to see more Indigenous representation.
Population's growing, representation should grow as well. That makes sense to me, I guess.
So you think the seats should go up?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm okay with that, I think. I don't have a strong opinion on it, but it doesn't seem like a huge change.
Logically, you don't, if you redistributed the ones that were there equally. You could do with 200 seats and then just spread them out equally. I guess the answer is no. To keep adding seats is just a waste of money.
I don't really think so. I think it just allows for a government to get a bigger majority out of it, depending on how they divide up the standings itself, rather than anything else. There's always a chance that there could be gerrymandering involved. So in reality, I'd like to see how this interim snap election has worked out for Trudeau than anything else before we decide, more seats.
Probably not.
Why?
300 people's a lot to organize in caucuses and whatnot. So
338 in total.
Yeah, so that's probably enough to represent 33 million or 35 million, however many we are. So yeah, hopefully they could redistribute those boundaries rather than just creating more.
I think we need better representation in the House of Commons. If that looks like more seats, so be it. But there's too much of the country that's disenfranchised at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think they need to kind of review how they even have senators. The American system seems a little bit more streamlined that way. I think in Canada we kind of dropped the ball with that, especially since I know the population disbursement is so different, and they have way more representation in the East than we do in the West. I don't think that's fair at all.
As Albertans? Yeah. No, I don't think we necessarily do. I think we're more than well represented.
No, there's enough seats. The distribution is all wacky.
I think Alberta needs more seats if we believe in equal representation, yes. But I also understand why Quebec is reluctant to relinquish one of their seats.
I don't think that could be a bad thing. Having more seats gives a little bit more room for representation of voices that are you know, don't meet the bar of what current seats kind of allow.
No, we need more efficiency in government. The House of Commons is bleeding us dry with their pensions and their politics, and so we really need more efficiency in government, not more bodies.
I think if we had a little bit more balance in terms of help from the government, in terms of money for the province, I think we'd do better with that instead of having representation in terms of the people.
Probably not. I think we have enough opinions already. I think that the team that the government that we have needs to work more closely together and look at more angles. If we have more opinions, then it's just, I don't think 4 more opinions is necessary.
If they're going into the West, not if they stay in the East. I think that the representation to the West to the East is not equal.
I think it's just a natural a result of the system that we have right now with electoral reform, and without a much broader reform of the electoral system, I'm not worried about that. I'd rather see a stab at proportional representation. That's what I'd like to see.
What is Stornoway? Leader of the opposition's official residence. Rock formations in the Arctic. Horse owned by Stephen Harper.
Horse owned by Stephen Harper.
Horse owned by Stephen Harper.
Leader of the opposition.
Stornoway? I'm going to go horse owned by Stephen Harper.
Rock formations in the Arctic?
Rock formations in the Arctic.
The first one.
The first one?
Which is?
The House of the Opposition Leader.
The House of the Opposition Leader.
Correct. You may high-five each other.
Built in 1913, Stornoway is the official residence of the Leader of the Opposition. Progressive Conservative leader George Drew, who was also the Premier of Ontario, became the first opposition leader to reside at Stornoway in 1950. And since then, it has become home to many well-known leaders and families in Canadian politics. It's also a house with a colorful history attached. In 1941, following the invasion of the Netherlands by Nazi Germany, the Dutch royal family went into exile, and Princess Juliana, her husband, and children came to Canada. They called Stornoway home until 1945, when Canadian troops helped liberate her country.
Now that everything is up and running once again, the business of moving forward with a minority parliament is underway. Of course, this can be a precarious situation for the governing party in order to avoid another election. But minority parliaments can also foster a culture of cooperation between the parties, especially on matters of high importance to Canadians. So, as we head into 2022, we took this question to you.
What are you expecting from all parties in a minority parliament?
I expect nothing. They're going to get bullied by the Liberals and fumble on. That's just the way I believe it's going to happen. And bullied is the best term I can use. Bullied by the Liberals.
What I'm hoping for is collaboration, I guess, and just working together and putting differences aside with a minority government, having to work across party lines, and I think that's That's what we can hope for.
What I'm expecting is another election within the next 12 months.
I expect the Liberals to go further and further left wing, and I expect them to not focus on the economy. I don't expect them to do very much that's going to help us economically. They're just going to do a lot of climate stuff, and we don't have the infrastructure for all these climate changes.
A hodgepodge. I think they'll be in alignment with the NDP and the Liberals. That's a power play, and it's consistent with history. And I think that we can expect to get less than what we would like.
I hope they can all the parties can work together to get us through the pandemic. That's my biggest wish.
I expect there to be a lot of infighting, I suppose, between all the parties trying to for the next election to win, for their party to win, and opposing the Trudeau government.
It would be nice if they could all just be able to work together, come together, and make good decisions for our country, not have a lot of conflict.
Just to cooperate and not turn it into contests on every issue. They should look for the better good, not the party line.
I don't think the last election should have been called to begin with. I think it was a complete waste of money. Nothing changed.
That they really look at how to create a stronger economy for Canada, because there's just so many people without jobs right now in Western Canada, the prairie provinces, and that's the most concerning to us at this moment.
Well, leadership on behalf of the Liberals and cooperation on behalf of all the parties. I think it's time to put the differences aside and meet the challenges of the day.
I would like to see our universal health care extend to prescription medications and better mental health services. So remembering that, mental health is health, and somebody's ability to afford medication shouldn't stop them from getting said help or, living a better life if it just meant getting that med. So, and universal dental I'd love to see, because again, oral health is important. It's linked to other things, and I just don't think that it should be a thing that is a privilege. It should be a right.
I'm expecting a real emphasis on the economy. I think there's billions of dollars that have been handed out during the pandemic and continue to be handed out. And I think at some point we've got to start developing a strategy in addressing, obviously there's a deficit that's getting larger and larger by the day. And I think we need to kind of address that. But having said that, from Nunavut's perspective again, I think when you look at the housing crisis that we have up there and the amount of investment that's going up there, I think it's atrocious what's happening up north. And I think having 14 people living in a 2-bedroom house, that's quite common throughout all the communities. I think that needs to be addressed, and that once again comes to investment. And when I look at the billions of dollars that went towards the pandemic, I sometimes wonder why on earth, given the fact that we've known about housing issues up north, why that hasn't resulted in a larger investment up north.
At least just set clear goals, just deliver on their promise. Just think in more practical terms. I think be more conservative. I think that is what I expect of this new minority government.
Well, we'd like to see them work together as much as we can to get the economy going again. I think that's the priority for most Canadians, is get people back to work and get the jobs filled that already are going lacking. Small businesses having a terrible time. So that would be the priority. Hopefully they can get together on those things.
Recently, the British Columbia government applied to the federal government asking if simple possession of illegal street drugs in that province could be decriminalized. It's a move aimed at decreasing the amount of overdose deaths in British Columbia, as well as removing some of the stigma and shame that go along with addiction. It has produced some positive results since it was introduced in Portugal back in 2001. In the past 5 years here in Canada, almost 23,000 Canadians have died from an opioid-related overdose. So, do we need a new approach? Our question.
Should illegal drug possession be decriminalized?
I fully support decriminalization of drugs. I've had fentanyl touch my family in a significant way, and I wouldn't want to see that happen to another family. Gladly, I'm able to report that we've come out the other side in pretty good shape. So, but that is a success story. There have been too many deaths and injuries due to the fact that drugs are illegal. I think it's time we put the money that we try to spend on enforcement into education.
I think it should be. And because then there's no real reason for it to be illegal and unsafe. It should be available in a safe way if people are going to use it. I think, unfortunately, it's a difficult one to cure. And that's why it's so difficult. So while people are using it, it should be safe.
I absolutely think drug possession should be decriminalized. I don't think you solve a mental health problem and a health problem by convicting people and further, extending sentences, giving them fines that a lot of folks can't even pay anyway. So it just clogs up our system and it doesn't help the problem.
They should be decriminalized because I don't think you could help the people that are struggling with those drug addictions and everything if you criminalize them, and they'll just probably get worse if they do that.
Anything above marijuana? No, absolutely not. It should not be decriminalized. We see a lot of mental health issues come from drug addiction and issues, and it even starts actually out with marijuana and then it grows from there.
I think it should, because a lot of it is related to mental health issues. And because someone has a mental health problem, they shouldn't be a criminal.
I think the answer is probably yes, because the current approach doesn't seem to be working. And so I'd be willing to give it a try, at least do a pilot project in one area or something to see if it can make a difference and turn things around.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who die of overdoses, so if it helps that, I think it would.
So you think we should do it?
Yeah. Decriminalize, yeah. Not the dealers, the users.
I think that there's a certain stigma to drug use and addiction that is very rampant in the Canadian community and just in the Western community overall. I think decriminalization would definitely help with getting the people the right help that they need. For example, like the shooting tents and all that. It's definitely something that we should consider, just out of the pure altruism of our people. Everybody hasn't really had the opportunity to live a good life, and sometimes that leads you to make certain decisions that you wouldn't normally make, if you weren't cornered in life, right? So out of pure altruism, I do believe that we should decriminalize. And I also do believe that we should destigmatize addiction in the Canadian and Western community.
I don't think they should be decriminalized. I think there's just too much of it. It's too open right now, and I've seen too many examples that have resulted from drug use.
With the right amount of funding, it should. Yes. I feel like we don't have enough avenues to deal with those sorts of things to get people help in regards to their drug abuse.
I think that there's a wide range of drugs, and I think that there certainly shouldn't be serious drugs like fentanyl decriminalized. I think we have to have an intellectual approach on other things like marijuana because of the varied usage that you can have for both medicinal and recreational purposes. But I think we have to have a clear delineation, when we have the conversation as to what we're talking about exactly.
No, I don't think that's fair. I mean, people have problems. They're going to get it regardless. But at the same time, you need some deterrence. And if jail or a fine or what have you is one of them, well, great. I don't see that decriminalizing would help the problem at all.
And if we're talking about
marijuana, that's a totally different subject now. But if we're talking about drugs that could affect children, or in the possession of individuals who are not responsible, they should be very punished in a way that they'll make sure that they don't do it again.
It depends on the amount, I imagine. If it's just for personal use, yes. But if it's for selling, like if it's lots, then it should be criminal offense, yes.
No, I do not believe it should be decriminalized because when you go into areas that give away free drugs, you see an awful lot of deterioration of the culture and the society and the safety of others. I think it should be criminalized because your brain is affected and you don't work, you don't do anything. So I think it's a very, very poisonous, destructive thing to do, to keep giving people more access to drugs so that they don't function well in a society.
If you decriminalize it, it is not going to stop the amount of overdoses. It's not going to stop the amount of people dealing on the streets, and I don't think it's going to save lives.
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, I think that there should be a greater focus on maybe safe use and harm reduction more so than criminalization.
I believe that might be a good way to go. There's European countries that have done that. I think we need to put money into treatment of addictions, not criminalizing it.
Illegal drugs, absolutely not. That would just lead to more and more and more and more and public acceptance and awareness of illegal drugs. So no bloody way.
Absolutely, yes, it definitely should. There is too much stigmatization around the use of illegal drugs, and I know of the situation that happened in Portugal where they decriminalized all drugs, and the drug crimes as well as like issues surrounding them significantly decreased. So I think we should just follow suit. It makes so much sense, like how marijuana has and cannabis has gone. Like, it's just so much better now, and it could just be the same with everything, in my opinion.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on CPAC. If you have any comments about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.